Coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, the sports wagering zone on this Labor Day weekend 2021. Welcome to the show. Not much going on today. We've got one big college football game on tap, and of course, we'll be talking about that. That's a big one, Florida State and Notre Dame. And of course, we got to start looking towards the NFL. That's going to be starting up real soon as well. Well, anyway, just to give you an idea, you're listening to us live right here from Denver, Colorado on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or even iHeartRadio. So anywhere you're listening to us, welcome to the show. I know it's a big weekend. You're spending some time with your families and friends, having barbecues and just having some fun. I hope you did okay yesterday. You had a big college situation yesterday with many games on tap. You had a lot of games to choose from. We talked about four of them. We'll tell you how they turned out as far as the pros picking those. So that's what we'll be covering today as well. And of course, we want to take a look, like we said, the NFL is coming up soon. So we want to take some looks at some of the lines of games that are coming up in the future and take a look and see. May not be a bad idea to maybe just start making some of those bets before the weeks arrive. So that's part of the story. We're not going to have any baseball situations to talk about again today. None of the pros didn't come up with any baseball for today because one big game, Florida State against Notre Dame. So that's the story with that. Anyway, as usual, what we do every time we come on the air, one of the first things we do is we take a look and see what happened as far as wagering and situations in Major League Baseball and college football took place yesterday and kind of give you a report on that. So let's talk about Major League Baseball first. Let's get that one out of the way. The favorites went 12-4 yesterday, including the Dodgers, who are a minus 161. They beat the Giants 61, and now they're back in first place, back and forth. The other day, San Francisco won. They went back into first place. Now, yesterday, the Dodgers won. They're now in first place. That's going to be a back and forth situation right up until the end of the season, right up to the last day, I think, anyway. And the biggest upset was by the Orioles, by the way. They were a plus 295 on the money line against the Yankees, 295. The favorites still lead, however, for the whole season at 59.8%. And the overs went 9-6-1 yesterday, and it kind of cut the unders lead down to 50.3% from 50.4%. It's very simple. Meanwhile, in college football, number 5, Georgia, 3-point dog, beat number 3, Clemson, 10-3. Was the marquee matchup of the top 25 teams that took place yesterday. Number 19, Penn State, a 5.5-point dog, also upset number 12, Wisconsin, 16-10. And of course, number 1, Alabama, 19.5-point favorite at Miami. Number 18, Iowa, a 3.5-point favorite against Indiana. And number 21, Texas, an 8.5-point favorite against Louisiana. They all covered as favorites in their situations as well. So the favorites did very well yesterday as well. But of course, the biggest upset, you got to hear this and pay attention. The biggest upset of the ranked team yesterday was FCS Montana, 22.5-point underdog, $1,100 on the money line, beat number 20 Washington 13-7. Okay, FCS Montana beat Washington 13-7, $1,100 on the money line. UCLA, a 2-point dog, also upset number 16 LSU 38-27. Number 2 Oklahoma, 31.5-point favorite against Tulane, and number 7 Iowa State, a 29-point favorite against Northern Iowa. Both these teams just barely came out ahead. And of course, they did not cover on the line as well. So that's kind of a little roundup of the big games that went on yesterday as far as college football were concerned. And to just give you an idea as to how it worked out yesterday as far as the pros were concerned, we had 4 plays yesterday. And of course, you had Penn State against Wisconsin. In that game, the pros had Wisconsin laying 5.5 points. And of course, that was a loser. Then you had Texas Tech against Houston. Houston being a 1.5 point favorite, lost that game as well. Meanwhile, Georgia and Clemson. Georgia was the pick in that game, and that was a win. And LSU against UCLA. The pros had UCLA in that game, so that was a winner at plus 2.5 on the situation as well. So we had 4 plays yesterday, had 2 wins, had 2 losses. So 50-50. That's the way it went. But of course, if you kind of look at it, depending on what the numbers turned out to be, you still could have come out a little bit ahead if you look at the numbers and what you got in at, okay? Because Georgia and UCLA were underdogs. You're on the plus side with the money situation. Just a matter of how high of a vig you went on Wisconsin and Houston. So that's the story for yesterday. Of course, there's still today. And we're going to highlight one big game on tap for today, and that's Florida State against Notre Dame. Big game. One big game for today. We're going to have a lot of money coming in on it. Keep a close eye on it. We're going to try to give you some analysis on that game, give you an idea as to which direction the money's flowing, kind of give you some thoughts and ideas on that game as well. So we're also going to talk about NFL. We're going to look ahead and look at some of the games coming up in the weeks ahead and kind of give you some thoughts and ideas on perhaps maybe you should start looking towards making some of those bets ahead of time before those weeks come up on our way. So we'll be talking about that as well. It's going to be kind of an abbreviated show today. It's Sunday. It's Labor Day weekend. I know everybody's doing a lot of things today. Maybe a lot of people aren't even listening to us today, but that's how it goes. And something you get a lot. Sometimes you don't. But again, just to get back into action again, kind of abbreviated show, just going to give you the Florida State situation. And then, of course, we'll talk about some NFL action, and that'll more or less be a shortened day for us today. So anyway, let's get that first break out of the way. So we're only going to have maybe 2 breaks today because a short show. So he'll be back. We'll be back in 1 minute right after this. And here we go again. Welcome back into the sports wagering zone on this Labor Day weekend 2021. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you're having a good time so far. We still have Monday. We have a day off tomorrow for most people as well. So I hope you're having a great weekend. I hope you did very well yesterday with your college football picks, or if you played some baseball yesterday, I hope you did very, very well. We're here to try to help you to go in that direction. So I hope some of the information we gave you was of some benefit to you, and you did okay. Anyway, today, there's only one game in town. This is the last Sunday without the NFL until next February, okay? A lot of attention It's going to be a lot of it paid to this one big game. It's going to be a huge betting handle. And believe me, there'll be a ton of viewers watching this. Anytime Notre Dame plays, they get a lot of viewers. They get a lot of money coming in. The spotlight's going to be bright, and it's going to be on both these teams around 7:30 Eastern Time, and this looks like to be a real tone-setting game for the season. That's for darn sure. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they're not playing as a member of the ACC this season, but the men from South Bend, they're still going to open the season against a team from that conference. So even though they're not in the ACC, because the schedules are set, years ahead of time. This is a team that's in the ACC, so it's kind of a conference game, but it isn't, because if Notre Dame wins, they don't get any standing within the conference, whereas Florida State won't either. This won't be considered a conference game. The Florida State Seminoles would love to try to win today and erase some of the pain from 3 straight losing seasons. With a season opening victory, they hope that they can pull off today, because they haven't been doing very well in years past. Now, a lot is on the line for these two teams. Notre Dame, they need a win to keep as much margin of error as possible down, in hopes of coming back to the college football playoffs. Florida State, well, they need a win like this just for the sake of their program, okay? As Mike Norvell tries to live up to the expectations that have been placed on him when he was hired to try to fix the program after Willie Taggart's 11-14 showing back in 2018 and 19. Now, Notre Dame is favored by a touchdown in Tallahassee, but money has hit the board on Florida State over the last few days. The total sits at 55.5 for this particular primetime game. Now, the dreaded or is listed on the depth chart for Florida State. Former UCF star Mackenzie Milton, he should come back to the field for the first time after one of the most gruesome leg injuries that we've ever seen. He could split reps with Jordan Travis, who led the Seminoles in pass attempts last year. He had 131. He led the team in touchdown passes with 6, but also interceptions with 6 as well. Now, there's a transfer from Wisconsin, Jack Cohn. He's going to get the nod for Notre Dame. A lot of teams have 15 or more returning starters this season, with the eligibility provisions that have been put in for the COVID-19 season. Now, Notre Dame has 9 coming back. Cohn is technically, he's not one of them, though he does have 18 starts to his name from his days back in Madison. Now, this looks like a game where the defenses should be ahead of the offenses. Travis wasn't very impressive last season, and Milton and Cohn are both, they're kind of new to these respective programs. The Fighting Irish, well, they have a new defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman, but he has had all off season to prepare for this one big game, okay? And as our Notre Dame Florida State trends show, the Irish are 13-2 to the under in their last 15 games, with more than 6 days of rest. Now, Notre Dame is also 11-4 to the under in the last 15 against non-conference Power 5 teams. So these are some stats that might help you going in that direction, because a lot of trends point towards the over with Florida State. But, the Seminoles, they haven't managed even 400 yards in the past 3 or 4 seasons, okay? This is a real tough Irish defense, and the Freeman being hired by Notre Dame could even take that group to another level. The under in this game seems to be a good look on Sunday night. So in this game, the pros are going with the under, and they're also going with the Irish in this game. Now, let's take a look and see what Chris Andrews has to say. We've been talking about that, trying to give you an idea as to how some of these numbers came up, how they evolved. So Chris Andrews, who is the sportsbook director over at South Park over in Las Vegas says this about this game today. You have number 9 Notre Dame against Florida State. He says this is another great betting attraction with the game of the year onus. He says he opened Notre Dame as a 6-point favorite. The pros jumped on the number, laying the chalk, even though he kept going higher and higher and higher until he got to 9.5. Okay, finally at 9.5 is they was finally the top number where the pros stopped coming in. Then the lines started coming back down. Dog money started coming on Florida State. Of course, being a 9, getting 9.5 points, then dropped to 8.5 points. He dropped it down to 8 points, and he was at 7.5 for a while. Now, of course, we all know it's down to 7 lately, but that could change. But they, and he was very much in favor of doing that and going in that direction, as you can see. But you can understand how these things evolve. The comes out at 6, being Notre Dame a 6-point favorite. Pro money started coming in. He kept going higher and higher and higher. He finally got as far as 9.5 point as a favorite for Notre Dame. And then, of course, all the Florida State backers saw that opportunity at 9.5 and figured, well, hey, I can get 9.5. So he dropped it down to 8.5, down to 8, down to 7.5. Now it's at 7, as we see right now. Now, the Fighting Irish fans, they're going to more than likely going to see 7. It may even go to 7.5, again, depending on how it goes. But there seems to be some equal money going on both sides at this point right now. Now, like he says, we usually don't have to go begging for Notre Dame money. It's out there. Already a lot of action. This is going to be a very high-handled game by the time it's kickoff time. There's going to be a lot of money changing hands, and depending on which direction it goes is going to determine how the sports books do. Remember one thing, the sports books profit whenever the dog wins. Okay, when the favorite wins, that's a negative for the sports books. They kind of lean in that direction. So that's the story with this game. So in this game, like we said, the pros are on Notre Dame, and they're also on the under in this game. And we gave you an idea as to how that line developed. So it actually started at 6. So kind of keep that in mind. We first opened it up at 6, being Notre Dame being favored at 6, moved all the way up to 9.5. That's how the money was coming in for Notre Dame at that point in time. And then, of course, people with the Florida State money, they were kind of sitting back, seeing how high it would go. And of course, you would do the same thing, just sit back. Well, 9.5. Wow, from 6 to 9.5, I can really do well. So in came the Florida money, dropping back down to 8.5, down to 8, 7.5. Now it's at 7. But of course, there could be some change in that between now and kickoff time, because from now on is when you can make the limits have just about disappeared. You can start betting $1 million if you'd like, if you happen to have it laying around somewhere. So that's the story there. Once again, the pros are on the Fighting Irish, as well as being on the one and only Florida State Seminoles. So let's take a break, our second break, and when we come back, we're going to do some NFL talk, look at some games that are coming up this season, trying to give you some thoughts and ideas on possibly making some early bets on some of these games that are coming up. So just a reminder, you're in the wagering zone. You'll be back in 1 minute. And here we go again. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms. This is going to be an abbreviated show. It's Labor Day weekend, a lot going on. People spending a lot of time with their family and friends, barbecues, a little brew going back and forth around as well. And of course, you got that big game coming up tonight. Notre Dame and Florida State. Big football. A lot of money going to be coming in on that game. That's the one big headliner for today. And like I said, I'm sure most of the people who are interested in college football are going to be watching that game very, very carefully. It's important to both teams. Notre Dame wants to get off to a good start because they want to get into the playoffs again. This is their goal. You got teams like that they just like Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and LSU, Texas, these type of teams, they just live to try to get into the playoffs. They need to get into the playoffs to make everybody in their situations very happy. So that's the story on the game for today. Pros are on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and of course they're on the under in this game as well. Now, talking about the NFL, because the season starts on Thursday. The Dallas Cowboys going down to visit the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, there's still value if you start taking a look ahead. You want to look ahead to week 2, 3, 4, 5, right on down the line. But, there's a lot of people that say, I don't think it's a good idea to make advanced wagers like this. Anything can happen, yada, yada. This can happen, that can happen. Somebody can get hurt. Sure, that's possible. But, we truly believe that you can put yourself in a really good position on some of these games by projecting how some of these teams are going to do during the season and winding up on the right side of those key numbers that are out there. Now, advanced lines listed are from DraftKings, and we're talking about Westgate Superbook as well. These are their numbers. In week 2, Bills are 2.5-point favorites at the Dolphins. Now, I think this line should be 3, and it is at some places. I think that getting it at 2.5 now is a good idea. If the Bills roll the Steelers in week 1, or the Dolphins get blown out by the Patriots, this will surely go to 3, and possibly even 3.5, at which point we could kind of get back some money on the Dolphins at plus 3.5 for a shot at the middle at that point in time. So if you got in the Bills at 2.5, and then the line went up to the Dolphins being a 3.5-point dog, you can play the middle on that one and do very, very well. That's what we're trying to show you to kind of think about. Now, in week 3, you got the Colts. They're 3.5-point dogs to the Titans. They open against the Seahawks, and then they play the Rams, while the Titans, they play the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Now, I'm looking at these teams being 1-1 at this time, okay? And likely the key number may move to the key number of 3 from 3.5, okay? Some are already at 3. So I think it's better to grab the hook right now. 3.5. Now, looking at week 4, you got the Bears. They're 5.5-point favorites against the Lions. The Lions are very likely to be 0-3 at this point in time. They're going to be playing the 49ers. They would be playing the Packers and the Ravens. So the chances of them being 0-3, very, very good at this point in time. Now, if the Bears are 2-1, after playing the Rams and the Bengals and the Browns, and Andy Dalton is still starting, then they're going to be favored by at least 1 touchdown. If they're 0-3 or 1-2, and Justin Fields is going to begin to start the games, I believe that the market's going to jump on this rookie against the Lions and still make them a touchdown favorite. So if you do like the Bears at 5.5, that's the time to get them now, because if the situation happens where we talked about it, it's going to be a touchdown in there somewhere. Now, in week 5, looking at the Packers and Bengals, the Packers are 6-point favorites in that game. They start with the Saints, then they play the Lions, then the 49ers, and then the Steelers. But should this come out of it no worse than 2-2, then I would expect the betting market to be all over Rodgers getting well in this game, as we call it. He's finally going to get well. He's going to do very well against the Bengals. I believe only a Rodgers injury can keep this line from being at least 7 when it gets to that point. So getting in at 6, if you like the Packers, obviously, that's the way to do it. Finally, in week 5, you have the Broncos. They're 4.5-point dogs to the Steelers. Now, I have these teams pretty close to my power ratings. Certainly too close for the Steelers to be favored by 4.5 points, even at home, okay? The Broncos could be 2-2 at this point in time, or even 3-1, while the Steelers, they should be 2-2 at best. Now, I suspect that the line's going to be long gone by game day, and we could be laying Steelers as 3-point favorites for a nice shot at a middle in this game as well. So looking at the Broncos at 4.5 as a dog, and then coming back with the Steelers being a 3-point favorite in the middle. You can middle that game as well. So just some thoughts on some weeks coming up, kind of give you an idea. It's something to really think about. I know you can't think about every single item that pertains to sports betting, but this is one thing you should kind of just look at it and see what you think of it. But if you look at it and you think it might work, you better start acting on it real soon, because once the season starts and that first game is over with, that's when the lines start adjusting for the games down the line. So on some of these situations, may not be a bad idea to get in earlier than waiting for the day of the game itself. So that's the story there. So let's take our final break and we'll get that out of the way. And once again, we'll talk about this Florida State game coming up today as well. So let's get that break out of the way, and we'll be back in 1 minute. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. It's a slightly abbreviated version. Not much going on today. We got that big game between Florida State and Notre Dame, and that's really about it. There's some other college games that are being played, little minor ones. And of course, if you attended any one of those minor universities, you might be looking closer at those games as well. But anyway, Florida State, Notre Dame, that's the marquee game of the day. ABC, you're going to watch it. A lot of people are going to be watching it. It's Sunday. It's the day before Labor Day weekend, Monday. A lot of people are going to be able to stay up, watch the games, not have to worry about going to work the next day. There's going to be a lot of money coming in on them. Notre Dame usually generates a large amount of money coming in, be a lot of money bet. Florida State has a huge following. They're going to have a lot of money coming their way. You run into a Florida State graduate. They love Florida State. They still back it right to the end. So they're very, very strong in that situation as well. So in that game, like we said earlier, the pros are on Notre Dame, and of course they're on the under in that game as well. And of course we're at 7. That's the latest number we've seen, that Notre Dame being favored by 7 points. Remember, in going over Chris Andrews' analysis of the situation, he opened this as Notre Dame being a 6-point favorite. It ran all the way up to being a 9.5-point favorite. That's how the money was coming in. And then, of course, the Florida State money started coming in and dropped it back on down to 7. So that's where it sits right now. And just a reminder that yesterday the pros had 4 plays. We had 2 winners and 2 losers, kind of give you up to date so you'll have an idea as to how well, how bad they're doing, so you can kind of use that information as well. So that's it for today. It's Sunday. It's Labor Day weekend. I hope you're having a good time, spending time with your family, friends, barbecues, a little brew being passed around, okay? But, of course, you got that big game coming up tonight as well, so you'll have fun watching that one too. So if you're going to be betting that game today or any other games today on your own, by all means, I certainly hope you have a great and profitable day as well. We'll be back again tomorrow. We're here every Monday through Friday right here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be Labor Day. We're still going to be here. We may have a shorter version again tomorrow, not sure, but we're definitely going to be here talking about whatever's coming up on tomorrow and talk about some more of the NFL games coming up in the near future. So that's the story for today. Like I said, have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy yourselves. Don't get too crazy with it. Have fun with your family, friends, whatever. But then remember, we'll be back again tomorrow right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, right here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So until then, have a happy Labor Day, have fun, and I hope it's very profitable for you as well. Goodbye, everybody.